you ready for a game of Spot the Difference? But the twist is, it costs £20. Welcome back to another Doctor Who action figure product review. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at yet another B&M exclusive action figure collector set. This time, the fourth box set as a part of the History of the Daleks series. Once again, focusing on yet another 1960s serial of Doctor Who, this time focusing on William Hartnell as the first Doctor in the Daleks Masterplan that did of course air on the BBC back in 1965. This box set features a flamethrower Dalek with silver and blue livery, and of course a Supreme Dalek with a black and blue livery. This box set is available to be purchased now from B&M stores throughout the UK. The recommended retail price is £19.99. And as always, even though both of these Daleks have been released before, you guessed it, there is a number of colour changes. So taking a closer look at the packaging, at the very bottom we get the inclusion of the limited edition sticker, along with the title of the set, as well as stating what episode it is from. As always, there is a rather large preview window giving a good look at the two Daleks on the inside of the box. I definitely recommend going into store and actually purchasing these by hand because I've noticed a number of quality control issues. However, that is something that tends to happen quite often with classic series Daleks, especially when it comes to paint leak. And then at the opposite side of the box we get the inclusion of a TARDIS graphic as well as the Doctor Who logo, and that TARDIS design continues onto the side of the box. And then finally, flipping around to the back of the packaging, we get images of the Daleks from the inside of the box, as well as a story synopsis for the Daleks Masterplan, as well as detailing a little bit about the Dalek props themselves, and basically the production of these props back in the day of the 1960s. Once again, I absolutely love this inclusion, and it definitely makes this set feel like a collector's item. Actually, of course, because Carter Options knows so well, and they know that Doctor Who fans absolutely adore a piece of exciting cardboard, here we have the inner diorama for this collector set, once again evoking something from the story. And I do believe that this time round it is the insert of the Dalek spaceship that we see a number of times throughout the Daleks Masterplan, or at least we do from the loose cannon reconstruction. So here we have both of the Masterplan Daleks out of the box, and this set takes a rather similar format to the History of the Daleks set 2, where we get to see a regular looking Dalek alongside a Supreme Dalek. So we have, to start with, the flamethrower Dalek that was originally released as a part of the Enemies of the First Doctor collector set, packaged alongside a Roboman as well as another 10th Planet Cyberman. And then we have probably what is more the interesting thing of the set for the vast majority of collectors, and it is the Masterplan Supreme Dalek, originally released as a part of the 50th anniversary Doctor Dalek 2-packs alongside the First Doctor, and from what I understand that collector's set is now considerably rare, so this set makes for a good perfect opportunity to pick up two rather interesting looking Daleks. I mean, one of them has a flame, what is not to like? And before we get into the actual Daleks themselves, I'd just like to mention, of course, the History of the Daleks collector set reviews usually focus primarily on that comparison to the pre-existing Daleks already released as a part of the range. At the minute, I'm currently at university, and due to current circumstances, it's not like I can literally go and travel home back to Hosty HQ and pick up the original Dalek counterparts, which is something that I may have done had I been filming this review before a global pandemic. However, for the meantime, we're just going to need to take a look at the Daleks themselves and discuss the differences without having the original side by side. So firstly, let's take a look at the flamethrower Dalek. Now this Dalek has already been released before, as I mentioned earlier. To be honest, I don't mind having a second one because there is multiple ones within the story, meaning that it is the perfect opportunity to army build and have some cool, unusual looking Daleks on the shelf. Actually, if you have other 1960s Daleks, you know exactly what to expect from this Dalek. Very much like how I mentioned within the previous reviews, basically they've used the colour palette that was also used within the History of the Daleks set 1 and 2, where all the silver sections of the Dalek are now much more metallic and shiny compared to their counterparts within the Forbidden Planet exclusive series, and overall this is a really lovely finish. I really do like it, and it makes the Daleks look ever so slightly more like props from the actual TV show as opposed to plastic toys. It definitely creates a nice sheen over the top and overall makes the Daleks look pretty damn cool. So starting off at the very bottom of the Dalek and working our way up, of course we have the regular base as per usual, which has been moulded in a black plastic. Now unlike History of the Daleks set 1 and 2, the fender doesn't in fact have a wash that has been applied over the top of this. Instead it is just a pristine regular colour, which is much like the Forbidden Planet exclusive series. I don't know, I would have quite liked to see it on these collector sets, especially given that the changes that have been made to this Dalek are considerably subtle and perhaps a little bit of a wash over the fender might have been a nice touch. From there onwards, we move up to the skirt, which is of course the lovely metallic sheen on the base, and then we have the inclusion of the light blue hemispheres, which this time round are a light blue, and from what I understand, these are an ever so slightly different shade of light blue compared to the previous Daleks Masterplan Daleks that we've seen released as a part of the line. Now, I've been trying to look at images and compare the two. To be honest, I can't really see it, but apparently it is an ever so slightly different shade, but there's really not that much in it. And then we move up to the midsection of the Dalek, and very much like the history of the Daleks set 3, we have the introduction of the slats and mesh, which hasn't been seen on the history of the Daleks set 1 and 2, and will pretty much remain from this point onwards. As per usual, this is a brilliant sculpt. We have each individual slat with the inclusion of the rivets, both at the bottom and top, and then in between this we have the inclusion of the mesh, which is a lovely textured design. It would be nice to perhaps have a black wash applied over the top of the mesh sections, just to bring out the holes in the material ever so slightly more, as for the most part this is just made out of a standard silver coloured plastic. Another similarity that this Dalek shares to the history of the Daleks set 3 is the inclusion of the white base colour on the midsection, something of which that also applies to the Supreme Dalek. And I know that a number of people have been saying this is inaccurate or possibly more accurate. I don't think people can decide. Basically, the original Forbidden Planet exclusive featured a light grey, and that was something that was very much prominent on the vast majority of 60s Daleks. And to be honest, considering that I have the original version, I really don't mind this change. If anything, it makes this Dalek be a bit more differentiated from the original. As I mentioned within the previous review, including that white at the midsection also divides up the silver a bit more, makes the Dalek overall look a bit more interesting. So to be honest, I quite like it, regardless of its accuracy. Taking a look at the weaponry, the ball joints once again have been coloured silver, and then we have the inclusion of the usual 60s blaster gun. This is a rather sharp detailed design with lots of different bars running around the side, as well as these sections in the middle, which is not present on the more common variation of Dalek gun. And then of course, due to this Dalek being the flamethrower Dalek, this time round the manipulator arm has been removed and replaced with a cup on a stick, which is just a standard silver paint application. In fact, it's probably been sculpted in silver coloured plastic, and there's not really too much detailing on this. It's just a cylindrical round end piece, which you can of course put the flame within. However, as you can see here, it can also be removed, which is how it comes within the packaging. And just like that, within a matter of seconds, this rather regular Dalek from the 1960s can have a flame added to the end of its unusual appendage, and now we can go and commit arson. Giving a little bit of a close-up to the flame accessory, because it is only seen on the flamethrower Daleks, this has been achieved by using a transparent-ish plastic, and basically it's a mix of orange and burnt orange in order to replicate that flame-esque look. And to be honest, it works rather well. I do believe it might be ever so slightly different to the original Forbidden Planet exclusive version. I actually think that it might be ever so slightly more orange, but as you can see under these studio lights, some of the light is shining through from the background, so yes, it's very nice. And of course, if you have multiple flamethrower Daleks, this will look excellent on display, about to burn down the forests of Kemble. And the final bit of detailing to discuss is the top half of the Dalek. As per usual, the barrel section is basically the same to usual, retaining exactly the same great detail, and of course the dome has that lovely metallic sheen. As for the dome lights, these have in fact changed from the original version, the rather golf ball style dome light, which had the transparent orange finish. This time round we have the inclusion of the original dome light seen on the Power of the Daleks sound effects Dalek, and much like the history of the Daleks set 3, this has been now made a cloudy milky yellow colour. As for the eye stalk, this has also received a number of changes. This time round we have the inclusion of the spaced disc design, have been painted in ever so slightly paler shade of blue, which is kind of similar to the hemispheres. And then of course finishing off, we have the inclusion of the eye stalk itself with the black and white iris end piece. So in summary, for the flamethrower Dalek, it is a really lovely Dalek, and if you missed out on the first version, it is a great opportunity to pick up a Dalek that will look certainly different on the shelf, because it is literally firing a massive flame. You do have the original, there isn't really too much difference. If anything, the changes that have been made are either very subtle or simply not that interesting. So now we move on to the Supreme Dalek. Now if you have the history of the Daleks set too, you kind of know what to expect because it is pretty much exactly the same colour scheme. We have the darker blue hemispheres and the inclusion of the black base colour. Now this is a perfect opportunity to pick up a Dalek that has now gone on to be considerably rare, of course released as a part of the 50th anniversary Toys R Us series, and to be honest it is a really smart design. I do like this Dalek and it looks absolutely great on the shelf surrounded by the regular silver and blue Daleks, but a very similar case to the previous Dalek that I've just taken a look at, where the changes that have been made are not particularly that exciting. We have the inclusion of the fender. Once again, this is the thin design that has been sculpted in a black plastic and no wash has been applied over the top of this, which again I think is a little bit of a shame. Next up we move on to the skirt of the Dalek, and the general base of this is a black, and to be honest I think that this may have ever so slightly changed from the 50th anniversary Toys R Us version. However, don't quote me on it. I've looked at a number of images and they look very similar, and of course I don't have them in hand. I feel like from my own memory, comparing this Dalek to the one that I've had on the shelf now for the past few years, I feel like this Dalek is an ever so slightly darker black. Possibly. I might be talking absolute crap. The likelihood is I probably am, but it is still a rather nice shade. Unlike the other Dalek within this set, the hemispheres this time round are ever so slightly darker. I do think that these are very similar, if not the same, to the original Toys R Us Supreme Dalek released as a part of the 50th anniversary collector sets. Again, something of which I will point out, due to this having a black base colour, of course paint bleeds do stand out quite a lot, so this is definitely something that you should take note of if you decide to go into store and purchase this set. Moving upwards to the midsection of the Dalek, of course once again we have the use of the white base colour. On the original version that was released as a part of the 50th anniversary sets, this was once again a light grey. It has now been replaced with the whitish, almost chalk grey, and other than that it is pretty much the same. Again we have the inclusion of the mesh, and the midpoint being of course silver as well, for the band running around the middle, just underneath the manipulator arm and the gun. And this time round both of the weaponry does also appear to be ever so slightly more metallic compared to the original release, and of course the ball joints are now also painted a silver. And then finally for this Dalek, once again the barrel section is exactly the same to usual, and of course the dome has been painted in exactly the same shade of black to that of the skirt. Again we have the inclusion of the more dome style of light, the milky cloudy design, and then we have the eye stalk with the base colour of black around the disc section where it meets the dome, as well as a silver highlight on the stalk itself. This time around the discs are once again the spaced out design and have been painted a lighter blue compared to that of the Toys R Us variation, which use a darker blue. Then as we move towards the end of the eye stalk, in keeping with the vast majority of the Daleks released as a part of the history of the Daleks series, the iris at the end has been replicated using a smaller dot of white paint compared to the original, having a much wider iris surface area. A little bit off topic, but I can remember when I first moved to university, I said to myself, when I get my own place, I'm going to have a rather minimalist room with simplistic stuff. I'm not going to have loads of Doctor Who merch, I'm not going to have any shelves of action figures, it's just going to be me, my uni textbooks, and a few things from home to kind of have memories. Here we are a few years later with an entire 1960s Dalek squadron. Well, they look cool, don't they? This is of course History of the Daleks set 3 and 4 side by side. I think pretty much prove the main reason why these sets exist. They look brilliant together, and we're creating this history of the Daleks with the different designs for the many different eras of the show. At the minute, of course, they're all from the 60s, so all of them follow a rather similar scheme overall with silver and blue, but even within that we still have that variety between the different shades on the hemispheres there towards the very bottom, and of course the different ranks between Supreme and drones, and overall they look great together. And with that, that is my review of the history of the Dalek set 4, featuring a Supreme Dalek and a Flamethrower Dalek from the First Doctor 1965 serial, The Daleks Masterplan. Overall, this set is very similar to all the other sets as a part of this series. At the end of the day, it has two main focuses, arguably three. One is for the collectors that basically collect everything, regardless of what it is and regardless of what changes have taken place, be it massive changes or absolutely minor changes. The other is for the fans that have just started collecting this series and were able to get the initial Forbidden Planet exclusive releases, possibly because they were fairly expensive back in the day. And the other third arguable reason is they're absolutely brilliant for army building. I think that this is one of those sets where it's not essential, because at the end of the day, the changes that have been made are really quite minor. I think that there's a few paint applications here and there that are different. The most notable is that midsection now being that chalk white as opposed to the grey seen on the earlier releases, but other than that, there really isn't too much to kind of display. There certainly isn't many differences, and if you don't buy this one, you're not really missing out on much. But for those of you that haven't got those initial versions, this is an absolutely brilliant set, showcasing a Dalek that is firing a flame, which will look absolutely brilliant on display, and of course a Supreme Dalek that looks as brilliant as ever, and again will stand out, especially if you have lots of silver and blue Daleks. So another really lovely set. My one thing is, go into store and make sure that you get one with good paint application, because I've seen quite a lot of them with bad quality control paint application issues. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on The Host Productions for brand new Doctor Who content each and every week, as well as regular B&M collector set reviews. Of course I'm going to be taking a look at the entirety of this series, and some reviews are up already. So thank you very much for watching, have a nice day, stay safe, I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.